So Julia, we're talking about tobacco and cigarettes today. We've had news from Imperial Tobacco, which owns the Davidoff brand, amongst others. What have they told us?
Well, today they came out with their 9-month trading update, and it showed that overall volumes were down, so they're not selling as many cigarettes, but their revenues were down by less, so 7% down for volumes, 3% down for revenues. So although they're being hit quite badly by regulation and a slowing Europe, where they have a lot of exposure, overall they've managed to offset that a little bit by raising prices, and that's, I guess, some achievement given the regulatory environment that they're dealing with.
Regulation, of course, always tough and getting tough for cigarette companies. We've had the ban on smoking in public places, certainly in the UK, and bans on advertising. The latest thing we've seen was late last year when the Australians brought in a plain packaging rule. All cigarettes had to be sold under plain packaging. Do we have any news yet on how that's affecting the cigarette companies?
Well, obviously it's only been in for sort of several months, so at the moment the tobacco companies are being sort of quite quiet on the effect it's actually having on them. There's been mixed reports in Australia. Some say there's been a little bit of a rise in illicit cigarette trade. Some are saying it hasn't been affected at all. Overall regulation so far, so things like hiking taxes and also removing advertising, has actually been quite beneficial for tobacco companies. Obviously they've saved on advertising. They've also been able to raise prices along with the tax increases. But obviously this regulation in Australia might limit that ability to raise prices, so it is something to keep an eye on in the future.
And I guess that's what's really key for these tobacco companies. If volumes are falling in response to a lot of this regulation, they really need to be able to keep the pricing moving forwards if they're to get any growth.
Exactly, and they have been able to do that generally in Europe. And Imperial, although it hasn't got the emerging market exposure, because of its market position in the UK being a leader there, then it's been very successful in raising prices and has some of the highest operating margins out of all of its peers within its UK business. But overall, emerging markets are still one of the biggest growth drivers for most of the tobacco groups.
Another area of growth for cigarette companies and generally in the tobacco industry is these new electric cigarettes that you're increasingly seeing around. What sort of impact is that having? Is that a profitable area of growth for these companies?
Well, certainly it's been an area that's been getting a lot of attention. If you look at the UK, they say 1 in 10 smokers now are using electronic cigarettes. So if that's 10 million cigarette smokers, and 1 million of those apparently now using electronic cigarettes. So, you know, it's becoming significant and it's growing very quickly. At the moment, it tends to have been dominated by very small private players. British American Tobacco have bought an electronic cigarette company, so they're trying to move into that. Imperial are going to launch one next year. But overall, it's still quite a very, very small and early stage part of anyone's business.
Well, I guess inevitably, if a small entrepreneurial company comes up with a good idea, it's only a matter of time before larger, better funded companies come in and try to replicate that. So I guess we can expect to see tobacco companies moving into this area in the next few years. Julia, thank you very much.